He believed the day would be ordinary, the kind that fades from memory before the sun even sets. Marcus stepped out of his delivery van with a package in his hand, moving on instinct rather than thought. The routine had become second nature to him after years of doing the same work every day. The sun was warm against his face, the street unusually quiet, and nothing felt out of place. At that moment, Marcus had no idea that this single delivery would quietly split his life into a before and an after. Marcus Johnson had learned early how to exist without drawing attention. He knew when to speak and when silence would protect him better. Life had taught him that calmness often meant survival, especially in spaces where he didn't fully belong. He wasn't weak, just careful, shaped by experiences that demanded emotional restraint. That morning, he carried those lessons with him like invisible armor, unaware they were about to be tested. Driving through the city had always felt familiar, but this neighborhood was different. The streets were wider, cleaner, and eerily empty, as if noise itself wasn't allowed to exist there. Tall gates lined the sidewalks, hiding lives that most people would never witness. Every house looked perfect, polished, and distant, like a showroom rather than a home. Marcus felt a quiet discomfort settle in his chest, but he told himself to focus on the job and nothing else. He parked his van carefully and checked the delivery address again. The house number matched, the street name was correct, and the GPS confirmed he was exactly where he needed to be. The name on the label slowed him for a moment. Ethan Whitmore, a billionaire tech CEO whose face Marcus had seen smiling confidently on television screens. Marcus shook the thought away, reminding himself that rich or poor, a delivery was just a delivery. He walked up the long path toward the front door, feeling smaller with every step. The doorbell chimed softly when he pressed it, echoing inside the massive house. Marcus waited, shifting his weight slightly, listening for footsteps. Nothing came. He checked the time, then his phone, then rang again, still met with silence. As he lowered his hand, his eyes caught something unusual. The door wasn't fully closed. It was open just enough to notice, just enough to invite curiosity. Marcus hesitated, feeling that familiar inner conflict between caution and responsibility. He told himself someone inside might be hurt or unaware of the delivery. He knocked gently and called out, keeping his voice respectful and calm. His words disappeared into the silence without response. His instincts warned him to leave, but professionalism urged him forward. Slowly, almost reluctantly, he pushed the door open. He expected a hallway, maybe an empty living room, nothing more. The moment Marcus stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt heavy, unnatural, as if the space was holding its breath. The house was immaculate, but not welcoming. Everything looked carefully placed, perfectly clean, and strangely cold. Marcus took one step forward and stopped. His attention pulled sharply to the wall beside him. At first glance it looked like a curated art display. Frames lined the wall with perfect symmetry, each one evenly spaced. Marcus leaned closer, trying to understand what he was looking at. His stomach tightened as realization began to creep in. These weren't paintings, awards, or family portraits. They were photographs of people, black men, young, middle-aged, ordinary faces frozen in time. Some were smiling naturally, others looked caught off guard, unaware they were being documented. Beneath each image were labels, numbers, and unfamiliar codes. Marcus felt his heartbeat grow louder as confusion turned into dread. He scanned the writing beneath the frames. Words like risk, probability, behavior index, and economic impact appeared again and again. He didn't fully understand the technical language, but he understood intent. These weren't memories or records, they were evaluations. Judgments disguised as data. Marcus stepped back slowly, his breathing shallow. His eyes drifted toward the center of the room where screens glowed softly. Long tables were covered with documents, charts, and digital displays. Lines rose and fell like silent verdicts being passed without consent. He recognized names of cities, zip codes, and neighborhoods that felt painfully familiar. A cold realization settled in his chest. This wasn't random research. This was structured, funded, intentional. The data pointed toward communities like his own, places already burdened by systemic inequality. The conclusions were already written, masked as neutral analysis. Marcus realized this system judged people before they ever had a chance to be seen as individuals. Anger stirred inside him, but beneath it was something heavier and more unsettling. This wasn't the racism he had been taught to recognize. There were no slurs, no shouting, no obvious hatred. This racism was quiet, polished, and wrapped in corporate language. It hid behind technology, spreadsheets, and efficiency. Marcus thought about friends denied loans without explanation. He thought about job applications that never received responses. He thought about neighborhoods labeled high risk without anyone ever asking why. Standing there, he understood how deeply embedded injustice could be. Fairness, he realized, was often just a word used to soften control. A sound behind him snapped his attention back to reality. Slow footsteps echoed across the polished floor. Marcus turned sharply, his body tensing instinctively. A man stood in the doorway, calm and composed. Marcus recognized him instantly. Ethan Whitmore didn't look angry or surprised. His expression was controlled, practiced, unreadable. For several seconds, neither man spoke. The silence between them felt fragile, charged with unspoken truths. In that moment, power and exposure stood face to face. "You weren't supposed to be in here," Ethan said quietly. His voice was steady, almost disappointed. Marcus explained the delivery, the open door, and the mistake that led him inside. Ethan listened carefully, his eyes briefly flicking toward the walls before returning to Marcus. Marcus realized something unsettling. The billionaire wasn't afraid of him as a person, he was afraid of what Marcus had seen. Truth had crossed a boundary, money usually protected, and that truth could no longer be unseen. Ethan began speaking in smooth, measured tones. He talked about innovation, market realities, and predictive modeling. He said the data wasn't personal. It was necessary for progress. Marcus listened, but the words felt empty. They sounded rehearsed, designed to justify harm without acknowledging it. "Necessary for who?" Marcus asked quietly. The question lingered between them. Ethan hesitated, just for a moment. That pause revealed more than any explanation could. Marcus looked back at the wall of faces. "Those are people," he said calmly. "Not numbers. Not risks." Ethan adjusted his posture, avoiding direct eye contact. Marcus realized that power hated being humanized. Marcus didn't shout or accuse. He didn't threaten or demand answers. He simply stood there, present and aware. And that, he understood, was dangerous enough. Witnessing was something systems like this couldn't easily erase. Eventually, Marcus turned toward the door. Ethan didn't stop him. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright, almost unreal. Marcus breathed deeply, grounding himself in the moment. He sat in his van for a long time before starting the engine. His hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel. Part of him wanted to forget everything. Forgetting would be easier, safer, quieter, but another part of him knew that door had changed him forever. He could never unknow what he had seen. As he drove away, questions crowded his mind. How many doors like that existed across the country? That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. The faces, the charts, and Ethan's calm explanations replayed endlessly. He realized racism hadn't disappeared with time. It had adapted, evolved, and learned to hide. It no longer always shouted in public spaces. Sometimes it whispered behind closed doors. Sometimes it lived inside systems people trusted blindly. And sometimes, it survived simply because no one spoke. Marcus didn't know what he would do next. He wasn't powerful, famous, or wealthy. He was just a man who opened the wrong door. But he understood something deeply now. Silence was also a choice. That door hadn't just revealed a secret, it had placed responsibility on him. Truth had been exposed, and truth demanded acknowledgement. Whether whispered or shouted, it refused to disappear. Sometimes change doesn't begin with protests or headlines. Sometimes it begins quietly, with a delivery, a mistake, an unlocked door, and the courage to not look away. The question isn't whether racism still exists, the question is how deeply it hides. And when a door opens, revealing the truth, will we step inside or quietly close it again?